Peyten Williams is here at Bo Ben
Right.
Consulting, and I'm Becky McKnight, and we're happy to see you. Today, surprisingly, we're talking about structure and routines, and it's Halloween. There will not be much structure and routine in your home today. Uh, but tomorrow you guys can be on it. I just posted in on my LinkedIn, and I totally believe that children thrive on structure. They thrive on routine. Routine helps promote a calm, happy household, and it is also the beginning of executive function. Your children will use these routines and the template for them the rest of their lives as they juggle all of their growing responsibilities um, and grow into adulthood.
Amen. Well, and I love that proactive routines is such a part of this 1, 2, 3 magic part two. It's not just the hey, quit it, hey, stop, but it's also the hey, start. And I'm so excited you're going to talk to us about that today, Becky.
Yeah, well, so the key takeaways, thank you, Peyton, for this structure. The key takeaways are that in 1, 2, 3 magic, there are both stop behaviors and start behaviors. And it's important for you to take a moment and think, what are they? What are the stop behaviors? And typically, I mean, you know what they are. They're the ones you want to scream, stop. The whining and the complaining, the poking of the siblings. I mean, the not eating, complaining about dinner. All of those things are the stop behaviors, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. And then there are start behaviors, those that require the routine, getting up in the morning, getting packed and ready to go, doing homework, eating a meal, all of those, starting to practice the piano, starting homework. Those are your start behaviors. I think the key takeaway to this whole thing is training. Think about it when you go to the strength trainer, it's not once. If you want to get strong, you have to keep going back. If you train your pet, it's not like you go over to PetSmart one time and then you're done. You have to keep up those routines. You have to encourage those routines, and you can't let them go.
Well, and you know what, Becky? So I started using the that's a one with my kiddos after last week because I thought there are just a few things that this sometimes that novelty of like a new, thing will catch their attention and it just has been really helpful. But you're absolutely right about the training because I couldn't just be like, that's a one, you know,
Yeah.
and they would get it. But we talked about it, and I said, hey, here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen when I get to three. What do y'all think about that? And obviously, we did it in a moment when I wasn't having to use it. It was like a very chill moment. I just said, hey, I learned about this. I want to try it. And the two kids of my three who I will have to use this the most on both were like, sounds great, mom. And so I was like, okay, great. And so they were on board from the beginning. And I think, just that little bit of training really helped us get it off the ground.
Wow, that's great. So the author Tom Phelan says that you should expect to do your stop behaviors for a week or two to get those down pat before you begin training the start behaviors. And I think that's interesting. Get your children's, the whining under control, and then add these routines which are really beneficial to your children. I can't say enough how beneficial little routines are and how they will last. But remember, third takeaway, we are all works in progress. I'm a work in progress. I every once in a while I tell myself I'm only going to touch the mail once. and I'm going to recycle right away and I'm going to put them in the right things. I have not sufficiently trained myself to follow that yet, but the more I teach training, maybe the better I'll get.
Amen.
All right, just so you remember from 2 weeks ago, I'm going to race through this. The stop behaviors when your children are whining. First of all, if you're going to use 1, 2, 3, like Peyton said, you have to sit down with your children ahead and say, don't introduce it as you put your finger up and say that's a 1. Right? Tell them ahead at dinner someday, I think there's a new thing that will help us. What you can even say, it'll help mom, it'll help dad, it'll help me not yell. I really don't want to be a yelling parent. I don't want to lose my cool. I think that this is really going to be good for all of us. And this is what it's going to be like. So as soon as the whining starts, you say that's a 1. You look them in the eye, and if you're at the grocery store, you can just put your finger up, right? They keep it up. They don't care. They see the 2. And he really does say 5 to 10 seconds. He doesn't say, you don't wait a minute. You don't wait 5 minutes. You do it right away. And finally, if they don't stop, that's 3, take 5. He does say if you're at the grocery store, you might have to say that's 5 minutes earlier on your bedtime. Something that's meaningful to the child, that because they're not going to go over in the grocery aisle and take 5, right? They need perhaps a consequence if you're not at home. If you are home, they take 5, they can sit on the stairs, they can go sit in the den, they can go to their room. You know how sensitive your child is. I would say if you have that super sensitive child, you don't really want to alienate them, like close them in the room. Maybe you have them just around the corner, or have a special chair in the laundry room or the mud room that's right next to you, or somewhere where they can go. And we used this at school. We call it a reboot. And then the trick is, don't say anything when it's over. Typically, they take a minute for 1 minute for each year of their age. So you have a 7-year-old, that's a 7-minute break. You have a 10-year-old, it's a 10-minute break. And he does say you can add minutes if you went straight to 3, and you can go straight to 3 if they do a jaw-dropping thing. You say that's a 3, take 5 and 5 extra minutes. Right? So you can augment it.
So I have a quick question about this, Becky, because I was using this strategy and I was like, okay, I wonder what Becky thinks about what I'm doing. So here, real quick, here's the scenario.
Right.
For in our house, y'all may know I have 2 boys. I have an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they love to tussle, wrestle, call each other names, all the fun things. And usually what happens is it starts out as fun and then ends up as not fun. And I'm fine with the tussling, but then there are times when I'm like, okay, I need y'all to stop because we got to set the table, or I need you to stop because now you got to go take a shower. And a lot of times I'm like, all right, guys, time to stop. And they just keep on going, right? But my question is that, so in that moment, that's easy. You didn't stop doing the thing I asked you to do. But what if, like, right after that, there's another stop behavior? So what I did, for example, my boys were tussling. I said, all right, boys, stop. They didn't stop. I said, boys, that's a 1. And they stopped. And then my littlest turns to my biggest and is like, you're a loser. And then I said, that's a 1. So it was like, you'd already stopped the behavior that I didn't want you to do. And now I have another behavior. And I'm like, okay, that's a 1, right?
Okay. So I read that chapter, and
Okay.
in fact, he says that's a 2.
Oh,
You do not have to separately count all of those things.
helpful. Okay.
Um, right. So I had a child who would say, you're stupid to me. Right. So you need to stop that. They don't stop. That's a 2. You're so stupid. Right. That's a 3. Take your break. So
Okay.
it can be
It's more
any
about
different.
just the general moment, right?
Yes,
Kind of all the things tend to happen, right?
yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Good question.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is that you don't lecture. You all know I was a big lecturer. That is what Tom Phelan calls the little adult. Um, what's he call it? The assumption. We do not assume that they are little adults. And so I think Peyton and I were discussing a little bit about the gentle parenting that you might see on social media. People are promoting gentle parenting. And in most cases, what I've seen on social media is you have to cut through the fluff and you have to realize that these are very, very young parents who found themselves perhaps yelling too much at home and are trying to fix that. And they think they've invented something new when in fact, Tom Phelan 20 years ago was saying, don't yell, take your emotion out of it, step back, say 1, 2, 3. When they come back, you give them a little hug and you go on with your life. And nobody would accuse 1, 2, 3 magic of being gentle parenting or new or whatever, but it's just plain wisdom. You don't want yelling in your house. You want to be the adult, the one who remains calm, and you're teaching your children emotional management. They're going to be just like you. So even if you're like me, you're not like that, you're not born like that, you have to fake it. Take your calm, take your calm pill, remain calm, and don't lecture afterwards. They know what they did. They don't need, you don't need to drive it home.
Absolutely.
Okay. These are the list of things. Maybe you have a much bigger list: getting ready for school, doing your homework, eating the meal, cleaning your room, taking a shower or a bath, brushing your teeth, going to bed. All of those things that just you have to do, right? Like I said, train your child first. Even I was thinking, even if you have a 10-year-old who has had no, who's starting to have trouble now, perhaps did fine for all these years. And all of a sudden they hit fifth grade and they get a little toot going on, right? You say, this is what our family does. This is what we do every night. Drive home the fact that this is life, life as you know it. And we are going to do this first. When at 8 o'clock, when I say it's time to go to bed, we're going to go upstairs. You can even walk through it. They're not too young at 10 to do a little interactive modeling. They love interactive modeling. The kids, they love it. So you're faking getting ready for bed, right? Walk them through it. Do the training. Do you train, Peyton?
Excuse me. We train for a lot of stuff. There are some things we probably need to retrain on right now. But yeah, when my kids first started making their beds in the morning, we trained like, okay, how do you do this? What does it look like to have done a good job? When you leave your room, you should turn your lights off and your bed should be made, like stuff like that, where
Yeah.
it's not just telling them, but we'd go upstairs and I'd be like, okay, take a look at how your bed looks right now. What do you notice?
Yeah.
All right, let's practice flicking the lights off before you leave. Great. Now you're ready. That's your morning routine.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents actually skip that.
Mm.
And because our kids are so smart and they talk so well and they talk so big. But um I do think that you have to tell them. You have to say, these are my expectations, right? Boomy, I think if you need to write them down, you could even, with an older child, have a contract. Consistency is important. And I think we can move to I think we can move to the next slide because basically, what I just saw Boomy wrote in the chat, we have to have accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have, once you've done the training and you've had your fun evening of training and going through it when it didn't really count. That was really a great fun time. Now we're going to do it for real.
Mhm.
Positive reinforcement is at the beginning so important, and we forget that we don't praise them enough. Look how smooth your bed is. Oh my gosh, you're so good at making a bed. Tom Phelan says that after about 8 years old, they sniff out fake compliments. So, and that's that some of them sniff it out at 6,
Yeah.
but make sure that you're really truly complimenting them and they will know. They will beam.
Yeah.
They will beam when you compliment them.
Yeah.
He talks about simple requests. When you ask your child to do something, you are not being stern or mean. You
Mm-mm.
have to do it in a simple business. It's time to turn off the TV and go to bed. You're not begging them.
Mhm. Okay, it's time to turn off the TV. Okay. Don't
Yeah.
ever end with okay.
Yeah.
Not a question.
And you don't even need to say please,
Yeah.
because they're not doing it for you. It's really just part of the family routine.
Yeah.
So a simple business-like tone. And then he's really strong on advance warning. Like,
Mhm.
don't catch your child by surprise. You know your child. I had one that didn't transition well. And so I was often saying, 10 minutes from now, this is what's going to happen. 5 minutes from now, 2 minutes from now. We had a big countdown.
Mhm. Yeah.
Don't take them by surprise.
No. We use timers for that, Becky. Like we have
Oh,
all these little kitchen
yeah.
timers sitting all around in our house, and I'll be like, you guys have 5 more minutes on your video game or whatever. Go ahead and set your timer. And then
Yes.
that also helps me not have to be the one that's like, okay, your time's up. It's like, or right, if you're going ahead and doing the advanced warning thing, those timers can be really helpful for kids who are like, but mom, I'm like,
Yes.
not me, it's the timer. Your time is
Yes.
done. I'm sorry. Yeah.
He's really adamant about the fact that timers are impersonal.
Yeah.
What you just said, it's the timer's fault. The timer went off. And you can set the fun ones on your phone or whatever. Um, Timers are really good.
I like
And
having kitchen timers for them to set it because then
mm,
I don't have anything else to do except for to watch them and make sure they actually set it for the time that I say.
oh, that's interesting. Right. Let them set the timer. That would definitely work in a classroom setting. I don't know why it wouldn't work at home. So the docking system is what some of you are mentioning. If your child gets an allowance and you have kind of established that, certainly that you can dock allowance. But there's all sorts of things you can dock. You can dock, um, you can dock bedtime minutes, right? They have to go to bed 5 minutes early. You can dock screen time. What else can you dock, Peyton?
I tell them that they're going to be, if like, I don't know if you would call it docking, but if they have taken away, like, if they're fighting and it's just terrible, and I'm like, okay, you guys, like, I've had to 1, 2, 3 you like all day long. Like you've taken away like 5 minutes of my peace. You're gonna give me back 5 minutes of peace by doing a chore for me for five
Yes.
minutes that I
Yep.
would normally have to do.
He mentions
So
that.
yeah. So stuff like that, or like sometimes we definitely dock allowance. Sometimes we dock screen time, but we also dock uh I mean, this is maybe not great for coaches, but since I coach them, I do it as their like sports coach. Is I'll be like, I'm sorry, like you're gonna be 5 minutes late to practice. Like you just are not gonna get to go do
To
the,
me,
because for us a lot of times it's like that's the thing that they look forward to the most. So I'm like, I'm really sorry, but you took your irresponsibility is going to make us late, but we're actually going to be late on purpose. Like we're leaving 5 minutes late because of your behavior.
wow. And if you didn't leave early, I mean, if you didn't leave on purpose late, it would be a natural consequence. Parents are always trying to make up for their kids' um, faults. And you don't want to mop up for them when they're in elementary school and middle school. You want those natural consequences to be the best teacher because that's not coming from you. That's just life. So when they forget their instrument, they don't get dressed up for the dress up day. You know what? They will the next time. Don't run that stuff into school.
Yeah. I think there's also like we have one thing I've just sort of noticed is like we kind of have a lot of like very perfect children running around sometimes. And we see a lot of very stressed out parents running around behind them. And it's like if your child, isn't perfect, you're actually doing a really good job as a parent. I
Yes.
think we kind of have to change that.
Absolutely. If you have a great tip, since there's only a few of us here, go ahead and put in the chat so that we can learn from you. If you have a great consequence, you do something great with the kitchen timer, um, different positive reinforcements. I do think charts work for some children.
Mhm.
I like charts. I reward myself when I make a chart. I make lists for myself for my own executive function. Like I said, these skills are going to help your children the rest of their life. So don't feel like you're being a mean parent. You are being the parent that you need to be that they will thank you for later, right? Make that chart. And when they're 35, they'll make themselves a chart for their busy week.
I think too, it's interesting, like, excuse me, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm not feeling great, but the when we think about it, it's like a lot of this for praising, having a kind tone, or just sort of impersonal docking, right? It's like a lot of the things that you would face in the business world are
Mhm.
things that like actually kind of work at home, right? Where you're kind of like, okay, well, you know, I I I didn't do the job I was supposed to do. Well, maybe you don't get a raise, or maybe
Right.
have some consequence. Like, I don't know. I think for our kids too, I want them to fail as much as possible when they're little, and when it's not dire, because then they'll have it figured out. Because I think too, as parents, a lot of times when we assume responsibility for their mistakes, then we are teaching them that their whole life other people are going to do that, and they become the colleague or the spouse or the friend that is like really not great to have, because they dump all their stuff on other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When your boss says to you, I'd like you to get this done, and then they walk away, they expect it to be done. They don't want to negotiate. They want it to be done. And so I love all of these things, and they are just life, and they will make your household calmer. And to me, this is gentle parenting. This is the true gentle parenting that you have to parent. You're the adult, you're the parent. Set these rules in place, get your household moving smoothly. And then for the times which happen every day where they whine or complain or whatever, do the counting and stay calm. Don't lecture and transform your home.
Yeah. I will say, Becky, this has been a helpful session for me, because one thing we're really struggling with as a family right now is leaving our things strewn about the house, not picking up after ourselves, not having tidy rooms. And I am not like a drill sergeant. I don't require perfection. I just require to be able to like walk across the floor without having to fall over things. And so, um, we've tried a bunch of stuff, but what I've realized is we haven't really trained it. So I was getting to the point where I was like, fine, like if I have to pick up your stuff, I'm just gonna keep it and you have to pay me for it. And if you don't get it by the end of the month, I'm giving it to Goodwill. But I think I need to go back and say, okay, guys, it's the end of the day. We're gonna do a quick sweep, take up all your stuff. Like, I'm literally gonna train you. Here's what this should look like every day. We're gonna practice for a week. And then after that, that's when we're
Yeah.
gonna move on
Yeah.
to like a consequence. but I haven't really practiced.
I do think that interactive modeling is fun. Any classroom that does interactive modeling thrives for the rest of the year. And I wonder if, I don't know what your household looks like, but if you bought one of those boards from Home Depot with the hooks on it and said, put their names under them and say, this is where your coat goes. This is where your
Oh,
coat goes.
we have that.
You already have that.
We have that. It's actually not like school stuff. That's in a good place. This is like our boys are shirtless a lot, or and so they're taking whip off their shirts when they come in the house and just throw them around, or like all
Yeah.
the books, from library and stuff is just everywhere. So I'm like, okay, if this is your stuff, we need to find a place for it. So
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And it's definitely a step I skipped. So train away. Please give us feedback. I think that this book is just simple common sense. And that's probably why it's lasted 20 years and so many millions of people have bought it, that it's just common sense. Our Westminster grad in California says hi. She says that don't be surprised if your children count you. Oh, they're smart kids, critical thinkers. They might try that on you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. Pull them back and start over again.
awesome. Well, as per usual, we got our little disclaimer here, but I believe next up is technology, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Next week we're gonna have a
We have
special
a
guest.
special guest.
Daria Gillespie is going to come on and help us out, think about some technology stuff next week. I'm really excited. And